Let's talk about two words that mean the same thing to normal people. But to us lucky marketers, what's the big deal about differentiation and distinctiveness? Let's start with a definition. So differentiation could be described as the process of creating an offering that is significantly different, that is accepted as different by the market, and that people buy because of that difference. So let's pick those three elements apart. First of all, it's significantly different. My truck carries 50 tonnes, their truck carries 10 tonnes. So the difference could be specification like that, it usually is, or it could be price difference, or it could be how you buy it, something like that. It's just got to be real and substantial. It's got to be accepted as different by the market. It's not us as marketers who decide if our products are differentiated or not. It's the market out there. So please God, don't tell me that customer service is something that differentiates you from your competitors, because that is never really appreciated by the market. And then finally, people buy things because of that difference that they accept. So McDonald's now use cardboard straws in their drinks instead of plastic straws. Have their sales gone up because of that? I mean, I actually don't know, I doubt it, but if they haven't gone up, then it's not differentiation, it's just different. So that's what we used to do, differentiation, that was all about marketing. What's this distinctiveness? Well, distinctiveness could be described as creating an offering that is recognisably prominent. Normally, that means visually. We're normally talking about something that looks different. Inevitably, this makes distinctiveness far more about visual branding. And it's far more about money as well, because if you want to get that prominence, you've got to splash the cash. So, differentiation is dead, distinctiveness is it. Is that really true? Well, let's take a look and use some examples. So, the classic old one, razors. Can we really say that there's a lot of differentiation between a razor from Gillette and one from Wilkinson Sword? I think you'd have to say no. Even if one's got 5 blades and the other's got 4, I don't think there's much differentiation there. You'd have to agree with that. If you were buying new phones for your business, well, they're all IP phones nowadays. Are you going to notice a particular difference between an Avaya phone and a Panasonic phone? Probably not. Sticking with business again, if you're looking at a new account software for an SME, is there a big difference in the product between Sage and maybe Zoho Books or one of the many other packages? Probably not. If you're buying cars, is there a huge difference between a mid-range BMW and a mid-range Mercedes? And remember, are these differences appreciated by the market? It's not what the marketing people in Stuttgart and the marketing people in Munich think. It's what the market thinks. And they'd probably say, no, there's not a huge difference. So it's difficult to argue that differentiation is nearly impossible. But I'm going to give you some other examples because we're going to move on to distinctiveness now. I'm going to show you 2 more cars. You've got to decide which the Ferrari is in the time I give you, which is about that long. Which one was the Ferrari? Well, you don't need to be a car buff to know that it was the red one, because if it's knee-high to a grasshopper, if it's loud, if it's red, it's probably a Ferrari. That's distinctiveness in action. And the weird thing about this example is the distinctiveness hasn't even come about because of the manufacturer, because of the brand owner, because Ferrari will sell you a car in any colour you like. It just happens that customers usually buy red. And while we're on the subject of colour, if you're in the construction market, you don't need to look at the logos of that equipment to know that it's Caterpillar, because in the construction market, yellow means cat. And your distinctiveness doesn't have to come from colour. It can be colour, it can be typeface, it can be a logo, it can be a smell or a feel or something like that. Anything that you can detect could be something that lends you distinctiveness. So I don't even need to tell you who that's all about. You just know instantly. These are the visual cues that underpin this aspect of distinctiveness. So that's it then. Distinctiveness obviously works, differentiation, really difficult, let's forget it. No, because inevitably, wise marketers will take a little bit of everything. Only the real devotees of one or another will say that differentiation will never work for you. Because let's look at some examples of when differentiation does actually work. So we had that example first of all. Difficult to differentiate those, but what about going back a little bit in time when this was the comparison? There's clear differentiation there, and you can also do the same thing. Instead of looking at Sage versus Zoho today, you can go back in time and look at Sage versus Pegasus, because in those days when Sage launched, it cost about £200 for your entire account suite. Pegasus, £200 for the sales ledger, £200 for the purchase ledger, £200 for invoicing, and so on. It was very different based on cost. And you can take other examples as well. Instead of BMW for Mercedes, how about if we're talking BMW versus Tesla? Surely that's differentiation that anybody would recognise. And then there are other ways as well. Differentiation is often based on technical advancement. Somebody wants to make something better. Where would we be today if Philips had turned around and said, yeah, we think LPs sound absolutely fine, and they'd never developed the CD and all the other optical storage that followed on from that? Differentiation can work, but there are certain things you've got to remember about differentiation. First of all, if you've got it, flog it for all it's worth, because if you've got that genuine advantage, it really will make a difference. But remember, one, it's got to be genuine and significant. The market has got to notice the difference. Secondly, differentiation, especially if it depends on technical advances, is going to be expensive. Philips spent a lot of money to develop optical storage technology. Tesla, I don't like to think how much they've spent developing electric cars. It's going to be enormously expensive. Thirdly, the worst of all, differentiation doesn't last, especially if you've built your differentiation on a technical advance. So think of electric cars. Every manufacturer in the world now has an electric car. Poor old Tesla, they haven't really started making big bucks, and now they're just an electric car maker, not the electric car maker. So those are the disadvantages with differentiation, even when it works. Are there any disadvantages with distinctiveness? Well, funnily enough, yes, of course there are. Think back first of all to the brands I've already been talking about. BMW, Mercedes, Tesla, Apple, Sainsbury's, Gillette. And these two, Google and Microsoft. The one thing you'll notice about them is they're all, if not the market leaders, they're way up there among the market leaders. Brand distinctiveness helps the big players. Brand distinctiveness maintains the status quo. It doesn't disrupt it. And that's bad news for any SME. To gain brand distinctiveness, you need three things. One, time, because people need time to get to know your brand, your visual representation of your brand. If you're thinking Google's new, Google's a 20th century company. It was founded in 1998. It's not the new kid on the block anymore. The second thing you need is money to get distinctiveness. At least you need more than your competitors have got, because you have got to make your name more distinctive and your brand more distinctive than theirs. So you've got to have the cash. The third thing you need is consistency. So yes, you can change your logo. Microsoft and Google and practically every other company does. But you can't change it too often. And consistency does not mean you have to keep the brand visual representation identical all the time. You can play around with it, just not too much and not too often. And from an SME perspective, if you're going to keep things consistent, make sure, all the logos are always the same everywhere. On your forms, on your brochures, on your website, on your vehicles, on your uniforms, and in every country where you might operate. Consistency is key to maintaining or building some kind of distinctiveness. So how relevant is distinctiveness as a principle to SMEs? Well, we can afford always to give a process time. So just set expectations realistically. Say you're not going to expect any level of distinctiveness in 6 months. You're prepared to say it might take 6 years. You can be consistent in all of your materials because that's one of the fundamental parts of building a strong brand. No problem there. The problem comes when you're talking about money. It's very unlikely that an SME is ever going to have the budget to put a dent in the distinctiveness that a market leader has. So for SMEs, concentrate on other aspects of brand building and other aspects of marketing. They'll pay you back more.